Hello, friends, and welcome back. We are here to discuss House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 6, Smallfolk. Here with Layla and Jared. Layla, will you start us off with an introduction, please?
Yes, I'm Layla Goshi, English teacher, writer, poet, and magazine editor. Targaryen fan.
And Jared.
I'm Jared. I'm at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and on Speculative Speculation podcast and some other fine podcasts like this one here.
Yeah, we are a busy bunch of people for sure.
Yeah.
So, Smallfolk, this was kind of a lot happens, but it seems like it was a little bit of kind of a chance for us to take a breath, a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and
Bit of a catch your breath type episode.
I think it was. I think it also rebalanced the events of the show because, there's like this, like in history, when they talk about history, there's like great man history, like everything of importance happens in, to royalty or to, the great leaders. But now there's like this historical theory that, a lot of small folk, for want of a better term, also had important roles to play. And I feel like we're starting to see that now, that these folks can't, there's certain things these folks can or cannot do based on the support or reaction of who they term the small folk, So it's like the small folk as a group is like another character in the show that's now come on board. So I like that aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was aptly named. There was quite a lot of emphasis on actions of some of the small folk in this episode, because we had the poor Sir Stefan who got fried.
Yeah.
But one of the things he said right off the bat was, "I am but a man, and the dragons are gods." So he kind of reminded us of that viewpoint of the small folk towards dragons and how they look upon them. And we also had that quite obvious spy monger who was working up the small folk in the taverns there.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little blunt, but they was just showing how she was working up the mob basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we also had, as far as the small folk go, the gift of the food to the small folk, which helped also, stir the people up and try to get them to have some, sympathy towards the queen. What's her name? Rhaenyra, yes. And then there's also the Alice Walker having her influence over Damon, and also, of course, Adam, Alan's brother, who out of nowhere gets chosen.
Mm-hmm.
So that was so a lot of small folk stuff happening in this episode around, just because it seemed like the royal family was doing a lot of talking in this episode.
Yeah.
And maneuvering and planning, but the small folk would seem to be doing all the action in this one. Relatively.
Yeah, and I think instigated or helped on by Mysaria, who I guess we can consider still a small folk, from the Smallfolk. But she helped Rhaenyra set that in motion, and I feel like they did kind of use the Smallfolk by they knew it would cause a riot. I mean, they knew it would cause trouble to send that food over. So it was a gift, but it was
Sure.
also, kind of stirring up trouble. But, Mysaria knows those people best. I mean, she lived among them. And then just in terms of that, the now advancing relationship between Rhaenyra and Mysaria. Rhaenyra is I guess, starting an affair with a Smallfolk. So, because there's the kiss at the end of the show. So, I think it's an aptly named episode, but also I do think they can't discount everybody else. Like some shows it's just all about the royal family and everybody else is like out there on the periphery. But I feel like they're bringing that in, and I really, I think that's cool. Yeah.
It seems like the small folk are also pulling a lot of strings too, because Mysaria, she's has an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the other worm. So at Mysaria, and then we have I forget his name. We'll find him on the list. The Larys, the Clubfoot.
Yeah.
We have him, who's also maneuvering between the brothers with Aegon, he kind of fell out of favor with Damon, so he's moving over to Aegon, trying to kind of get in good with him, trying to get his hooks into someone. So there's a few small folk who are making big moves, who aren't in the royal family, but they are able to push some weight around, and it seems like no one sees them coming. I think the royal families, they have tunnel vision and they don't see the other dangers
because they just they discount them. And even when the show opens, although I forget the name of the lord that what's his name, Lannister, shows up with like I don't know how many men, like 10,000 men or some like giant number, and says, well, we'll be happy to stay here for a while, in your keep, and essentially just, going to drown this lesser noble with all of those men, trying to feed them and care for them. So I think it even opens with that lack of concern and care from the more powerful to the less powerful. So
interesting. I loved the symbolism in that opening scene with the lion in the cage. I think that really said a lot, because the Lannisters, of course, they brought their lions with them, but their lions are in a cage, and you wonder how many other powerful people are in their own symbolic cage that they have to, try to work their way out of, or don't even know they're in it, and I thought it really stood out to me, that symbolism that was in the beginning of the show.
I think that's a great point. Even Lannister, I guess, is in a cage, even though he's now leaning on the less powerful guy. He himself is at the mercy of, the just the war, between the Targaryens. And maybe there's only so many moves he can make too. But speaking of that war too, I'm really fascinated by how they're playing the relationship between Aegon and Aemond now.
Sure.
Yeah. Aegon very smartly said that he remembers nothing, when Aemond came in the room. And, I still wondered if Aemond was about to kill him. I mean, that's what I like about the show, I guess. There's just enough room there for the unexpected. But I like what they're doing now that Larys, he was essentially humiliated by Aemond, you know, as Aemond said, bring Otto back. So, he's gone to play somewhere else, and that's really masterful. So,
Yeah, I think actually that's a very good decision on Eamon's part to want to bring that kind of an experienced statesman back into his fold and try to get him on his good side, especially after the way he dismissed his mother. It was you got to wonder what he's because that's because he knew that previously he had to know previously that his mother and his grandfather were kind of in cahoots or on the same side or at least in tandem with each other as far as what they want to do for policy. So with bringing his grandfather back as the hand, what is he trying to accomplish by doing that at the same time as shunting his mother aside and not allowing her to be a part of all this? And you wonder what he's up to there, and it's quite intriguing.
Yeah, I wondered. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, well, I wondered if he felt that she was more Team Aegon than Aemond, and also with his search for a new hand, that's acknowledging that Cole is not going to be his hand, and he has no desire for Cole, Christian Cole, to be his hand. And I'm sure he knows that his mother is sleeping with Christian Cole, so there's also that aspect of just not wanting any of that influence left on the council. I think there's that. And maybe feeling that she always favored Aegon over him, because at the end she says, are you still mad about what happened when you were a child? And maybe to a point he is, but maybe it's just all of that together. He wanted to set the tone that this is a new era.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but if it's a new era, why not bring in Larys Strong as your hand?
Yeah.
Probably doesn't trust him.
Possibly, yeah.
He does seem to have observed everything, and so Larys has buttered up to his mother, and everyone before, and so I do think it's partly rooted in his childhood, and it's him wanting to, maybe, I don't know if revenge is the right word, but establish new boundaries for himself. I'm glad he's asking about Otto, but I do question those other decisions because he's isolating himself too. So.
It seems like that's what he wants, is to kind of have a complete turnover, and like you said, to kind of build it from the ground up, because he doesn't trust anyone there. And Alicent does seem to favor Aegon a lot more than Aemond, so I'm sure he realizes that, and still not still not happy about his childhood and the way that he's been or the way he feels he's been disrespected. So now it's his time to. He's calling the shots now.
Yeah.
So
Again, it's that second son thing, and also, she has Helena, so that's her girl to, baby or whatever, and then she's got Aegon, who is her oldest son, who also was or is the father of her grandchildren. So just all of that comes together, and Aemond's out there in the cold, and yeah, I think this is his revenge. And again, drawing a parallel between him and Damon. Damon is seriously going through it, at Harrenhal, but it's the same thing. It's like, did his brother love him?
mm-hmm.
Basically, that's what I got out of it.
Pretty good dreams at Harrenhal. I think all those are. I'm kind of surprised they haven't had. He hasn't had visions of what happens in the future. It always seems to be the past, because I thought they'd try and tie in the other series, but it's always his past, which I think too many references back to the other series and what happens in the future would probably not be a good thing. It'd be fun for us to remember what, but I think it's better to leave it to past and focus on what's happening now instead of all about the future. But yeah, those are he's had some, and I always love how they transition from his dream to he's mid-sentence talking to someone else, or it seems like it's almost like he's sleepwalking. He doesn't have any control. He's not waking up in bed, from a dead sleep. He's interacting with other people. So it almost makes it worse that he has no control over what he's doing when all these visions are happening.
Yeah. And speaking of, looking into the future or the past, if the Wyrwoods are an influence, I've been thinking there's something in Damon's dreams that might be repetitive. I mean, if we think hard about the series as well, and just so that the Wyrwoods have this memory of all of this happening, that I guess I just wonder, I don't know, that may still yet to play out in the books, I guess. I mean, but yeah, I'm not quite sure if I'm making the point I'm trying to make, but it's like the Wyrwoods in Game of Thrones drew out the wants, say, of, Bran. Like, Bran wanted to fly, it's what he most dearly wanted. And he did eventually get it, but not in the way that he wanted to, And Damon wants certain things, and maybe who knows, maybe he will get them, but not in the way that he thinks he will. He wants to be loved by his brother. He wanted to be the heir. I don't know. I just feel like he's being led to act a certain way, But we're not there yet, so we have to wait and see how.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh no, it was from what you were saying. I think he is driven to act. After his conversation with Alice, I get the feeling that he's being directed, like he's being given the visions he needs to have to progress. It almost felt like they're kind of guiding him in a way that he will, at least in the short term, succeed.
Yeah.
Or they're not leading him wrong, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. I was looking for a repeated pattern, and it's like the repeated pattern is that the Wyrwoods help you find yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to succeed at? I mean, obviously we had the 3 days time thing, and then the old man Tully died 3 days later, which helps his cause. But is he going to succeed at pulling together the forces that he needs to help his wife, or is he going to succeed at what he wants ultimately, to probably be king himself? You wonder what that success, what does that look like for him?
And I even wonder, too, on a deeper level, is it what the Wyrwoods want?
Yeah.
Like sharpening up these people to explore themselves so they can act, but then are they at that point acting for their own interest or acting for the Wyrwood interest? So I guess we have to wait and see what happens to Damon. But that's my theory at the moment, because I feel like they, for Bran in the show, I feel like they were always there. Something was always there guiding Bran, either through the Wyrwoods or the Wyrwoods themselves. So, because ultimately if we're looking at Martin's whole theory, it's, like the environment, how the environment is deteriorating. The north, winter is coming, etc., all of that, and the Wyrwoods are part of this, and so the Wyrwoods embraced Bran and directed Bran a certain way. Are they doing the same thing to Damon? That's my theory. I have no idea if that's how it's going to play out.
Or maybe they could be trying to win his favor by getting rid of, because she warns him there'll be 3 days and the winds will change, and then he gets the help he needs. But are they doing that to win his favor, to kind of gain his trust? So it could also be the Wyrwoods, maybe another, just like the Smallfolk are manipulating the other people. They could be manipulating him too, to do so. Everyone's having their strings pulled.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's a good analysis. And when he does find out the old man is dead, old man Tully, I think it is, doesn't he cry? And I don't know if he was crying because he felt guilty at that point, or if he was like crying with happiness that now, he could advance his cause.
So they're breaking him down until his lowest point, and then they're going to give him a little something to pull him out of it and ultimately control him, potentially.
Oh, that's a good thought. Good for
torturing him for a while.
That's a happy thought for the plot.
Yeah.
Maybe not for Damon himself. But he is definitely going through it. He is really in his dark night of the soul there at Harrenhal, and I just love it. So.
I love Harrenhal. It's such an interesting place.
Yeah, me too. Because it's got that reputation of being haunted, Yeah.
Blame it on the ghosts.
Right. Right.
So we got kind of thrown a little bit of a curveball with the dragon choice at the end there, because the whole time I had a feeling that Sir Stefan wasn't going to be the guy.
We had to know, right? Like that just doesn't happen, and right, you had to know that.
Yeah, and which was fine. I was like, yeah, it's not going to be the first person they choose. I get that, but the whole time I think they were kind of hinting that it was going to be Alan that eventually becomes a dragon rider. They because his brother keeps pestering him. Uh, you're the first mate, and this is a good thing. And he's like, no, I don't want it, and all that stuff. And then they show him Alan shaving his head, and you get the little white hairs, so he's definitely got the Targaryen, no, the other guys, the Valerian.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Blood in him and stuff like that. It's very strong in him, but he's hiding it, and he's shaving his head, and so you're thinking, okay, yeah, it's definitely going to be this guy. And then all of a sudden, at the end, the dragon, what's the dragon's name? Sea Smoke. Comes in and chooses his brother.
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, okay.
I found that there were two things with that, because supposedly dragons bond for life. So is that a hint that Rhaenyra's ex-husband that went overseas with his intended his spouse or whoever, he can't have died? So is this kind of a twist in the show that Sea Smoke let him go and let that bond go, and now has found someone else? Or is it that he really died? Because Rhaenyra was married to Corlys's son, and they had a sexless marriage, basically, right? So then he left to Pentos, and
did he die?
I don't think so. I think didn't they pretend that he died, but he actually took a boat,
Yeah, then they sent him away, right?
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, so he's supposed to still be out there somewhere, but so for whatever reason, maybe Sea Smoke picked Adam because it was another member of Corlys's family, another son of Corlys, or a relative of his former person, So
one thing, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say the one thing I can't get out of my head, and am I the only one who thinks that Adam of Hull looks like the guy from Milli Vanilli? It looks just like him. He looks just like him.
Wow, that takes me back.
Yeah, it sure does.
Now you can't unsee it. So
no, you cannot.
You're welcome. The dreads and everything, but yeah.
And something that a connection I did not make last time that maybe you all did, and it just went over my head, but for Jacaerys to say, hey, maybe someone else with Targaryen lineage, would be able to ride a dragon. I mean, technically, Jacaerys is a bastard. I mean, even though he was claimed by Corlys's son as his son. I mean, all of Rhaenyra's boys belong to Harlan Strong, although they were born in wedlock when Rhaenyra was married to Corlys's son. So the official word is that they belong to Corlys, but everybody knows they're strong. So it's just interesting that Jacaerys would have suggested that. And it went over my head last time. But I did some reading. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Technically, he's only half Targaryen and half strong. So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So many different lineages and bastards and bloodlines, and there's just so much to keep track of.
Well, and it kind of shows the hypocrisy there, because Adam and Alan are not claimed by Corlys, and so they're not part of the in crowd, but Jacaerys being and his brother being, even though they're actually, is it Harlan Strong's? Harlan, the first name? Strong's sons, they're considered Targaryens. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting contrast there between one side and the other. It all depends on who recognizes who, I guess. And,
yes.
It's you could look at it as hypocritical in many ways amongst the royal families, because it seems to be all about perception on who they recognize, whether or not the discretion, so to speak, was accepted.
Yeah.
And how it's perceived to the public, and we couldn't have Rhaenyra. It couldn't be made to look like Rhaenyra had an affair, so she had to legitimize the sons in order to keep that perception of, the just ruler, so to speak.
Yeah.
And whereas it couldn't look like, whereas Corlys couldn't, the exact opposite. He couldn't look like he had any illegitimate sons with his lady or queen, or his wife, for the exact opposite reason he couldn't claim them. And it's really, that's a really good contrast that you bring up there, and it just goes to show you that through the dragons' choices, the dragons don't seem to care. They're kind of gods above that. They're above that stuff, and I think it's very similar to. You were saying stuff about the Wyrwoods earlier. I think they are, whatever they are also above that, and their purposes are foreign to the foibles of humanity, whether royal or not. And I think it's I think that's a great theme that's going through there. Yeah.
And that's a great point too, because Sea Smoke could have been thinking, what in the world are they doing bringing me this guy? I'm gonna show up.
You're a French fry.
And they missed a great opportunity there, because back when Daenerys was raising her baby dragons, there was that scene where it was like dragons always need to have cooked meat, and the dragon was like spraying this piece of meat or putting fire on it. And I was waiting for the dragon to chomp the poor guy, but they took the camera away before that happened. And I seriously thought they would. I felt like that would add to the reason why people thought, it's not just that they fly around, they shoot fire, but they are very dangerous and destructive. So yeah, I felt like they cut that scene short, but overall, I didn't expect him to succeed. Poor guy. Yeah. But Adam, very cool. Yeah. So I can't wait for that scene, because Rhaenyra took off like she was going to go to battle with whoever took Sea Smoke. So, she stomped out of there. She got her.
Yeah, but that's actually a good point there. Rhaenyra, she took off to go out there to see what happened with Sea Smoke, but she had also been chomping at the bit the whole show. wailing about not being able to act,
Yeah.
being that lion in the cage in her little keep, her castle there. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't take action without just a bunch of words, without sitting behind her in her little safe spot, her little safe cage. And so finally, she'd been complaining about that the whole time, and then finally this little event happens where she's like, all right, and she doesn't really tell anybody what she's doing.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm doing this. And of course her son's mad at her, and she goes and just takes off and does it at the end. So that was exciting, actually. So I want to find out. Can't wait to find out next week what she's doing.
Yeah, and her son is chomping at the bit too, because he's been having to stay behind, as the heir, and so now she has taken off and left him as the heir again. Similar to how Aegon took off on his own to go to battle. But I do think Rhaenyra is going to come out a lot better because she's not knowingly going into battle. Well, she may be risking that. She may be thinking she's going into battle because she's thinking.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think she just wants to know firsthand what happens, what's going on. At this point, I think she's not as hot-headed as Aegon is, of course.
Yeah. True.
And
true. Yeah. Yeah. So that's going to be a good scene, and that's what I'm waiting for next time. And there's another dragon in the Vale, and I didn't get a chance. I should have looked that up, but how did that dragon get there? And
that's a good question.
So,
yeah, I forgot about that. What was up with that? Because she went out and she saw all the burnt foliage and what have you, and the remains of sheep or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah. So who is that dragon, and does it have a rider? Does it have a partner or whatever?
I'm trying to remember my dragon lore. It seems like there was one dragon that could not be, would not take a rider. I don't know if that's the same one. So worth looking into. But, plot devices being what they are, I wonder if it's either going to save the other baby dragons, or Rhaenyra's children, or somehow they're all going to meet. It seems like that. And I forget who one of Damon's daughters is taking care of them. So, just wondering how that's all going to work out too, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some hope for her. Because there hasn't been a dragon that's accepted her yet as a rider. So
I did lots of research, and it looks like there's speculation that the dragon in the Vale is Sheep Stealer.
Oh, okay.
It's a legendary creature from the books, but they're not. It's just a theory.
Okay, and Sheep Stealer, I'm pretty sure, is the one that the bastard Targaryen. Maybe her name is Nettles.
Jaehaerys, it looks like, is a wild dragon who came into being during the era of Jaehaerys I Targaryen. Having remained unclaimed for most of his lifetime, the flying creature mostly targeted sheep for nutrition. So they're thinking that could be the dragon in the Vale.
It could be. I think that at one point one of the bastard Targaryens was able to either ride sheep stealer or something. So there's some possibility there. Although I'm thinking they, I don't know if they'll rewrite that, but just like what George R.R. Martin said about, what was it? He was saying you don't put something there unless you're going to use it, So you don't put sheep stealer in the Vale in the show unless you're going to use them somehow.
I agree with him, but I also think if that's true, then please finish the books.
Right. So we know how he used it. That's right. Yeah.
I agree. If you're going to do those things, you should have a payoff for them and have it be for a reason. But also, come on, let's finish the books. One day, hopefully.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Well, so we have some potential, of course, big battles coming up here in the next couple episodes, because we did see, a couple of showings of the Starks earlier on in this season here. So when is those people going to come into play? At what point? And that going to be the counter to all the Lannisters with their 10,000 people there, and also between that and Damon, is he finally going to get a good handle on the Tullys and their forces, and finally pull that army together to help battle that big Lannister host? So there's a lot of things coming into play, and I wonder when we're going to get that big battle scene. Is it going to be in the last episode, or are they going to have it in the penultimate one? Or, I'm really...
I hope we don't get, like, the last 10 minutes, all the armies arrive, and then we have to wait, like, I don't know, a year for the next one. But I am missing the Starks in this. I really am. I mean, I do enjoy all this lore, dragon lore, and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the whole series, the Starks, of course, have a major role to play. And when we first meet them in Game of Thrones, they have their platitudes, winter is coming and taking care of the wall, but essentially the meaning's been lost, the full meaning,
Yeah.
And I hope they cover that in this series as well. Is how did that also become forgotten by the Starks, because when we open up in the books and the show for the Starks, this deserter is saying he saw something, really supernatural in the woods, and he still just gets executed for deserting. There's no acknowledgement that, there's some bigger issue here. So, I hope we see that. I mean, I'm almost positive we'll see something, in this series that speaks to that.
Yeah, I don't anticipate another big battle. I think it'd be more a big event, or like a meaningful event, something that raises the tension. But I think after the battles we've had, I don't know if we'll have another one. It seems like that'd be a lot for one season, for 8 episodes.
Oh, that's true.
But I think I kind of see why people, when we get to the Game of Thrones timeline, or, I kind of see why people don't take it seriously, because they've been saying winter's coming for like hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So, I can see why it turns into a kind of a bedtime story instead of something that people take seriously, because it's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I think even in the first or second episode, they hinted that there already was less discernment in the people that they send to the wall in this time. And of course, we know by the time Game of Thrones comes around, it's only prisoners
Yeah.
and unwanted bastards and stuff. And so the but we saw a little hint of that in the first couple episodes in this season, that it was already looked upon as something that people didn't want to throw resources at, even though they still felt obliged.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's these discussions. I really give George R.R. Martin credit. I mean, he really thought of everything, and so I'm pulling for him to finish those things. Yeah.
Come on, George.
But I made peace myself that um, if the final books never come to pass, I feel like we've been given so much to chew on. It's still enjoyable.
Mhm.
It's still enjoyable. But I'm hoping that he's just got it all locked up somewhere until, like when he's ready to publish. And I have thought before maybe he feels like getting the series out first. It's more fun for us to all be talking about the series and not know how it ends than to publish the books and then, maybe the series audience will go down, if we know how it ends. I don't know. I'd watch them anyway, but
Yeah.
I mean, I know how Lord of the Rings ends. I watched the movie more than once. I've watched it. So
I kind of feel like the goodwill for the series has been the goodwill has been kind of for us. We've talked about how we didn't have really high expectations. We were kind of still a little bit jaded by the whole last couple seasons, but I think the goodwill. I think they're earning goodwill back just for the franchise in general. So
I agree.
I kind of feel like it's more likely to happen now than before.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point. So
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, this season has just been so fantastic so far. If anybody's has any iota of patience, they can start to see that they they're trying to turn that perception around, that bad taste from the last season of the Game of Thrones, and
yeah,
it anybody who just wrote it off no matter what, they're missing out
yeah,
on some really great television.
yeah. I know a few people.
And it is the most unique situation.
Yeah,
This has never happened. The adaptations have always been on source material that's been finished.
yeah,
This is the most unique situation we've had
yeah.
in TV history.
Yeah.
I agree. I noticed he did come out recently distancing himself a bit more from that ending. Did anyone see that interview where
Mm-mm.
he made more of a statement of sort of, how he said he had drawn some, he had drawn a framework, but he made these comments like when he watched it, he was like, okay, that's one way to do it, I mean, he seemed to be distancing himself more from it than before. So I'll try to find that interview because it was just like 3 weeks ago that I watched it. So I have some hope there. Whatever happened, I have some hope for a realistic, logical progression of a story. Within the fantasy realm, of course, but it gave me a little more hope. So, but either way, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'll watch it and talk about it and read it, whatever.
Just imagine crafting this story for a few decades and then someone else takes it over and finishes the adaptation for you, that must really be tough.
I'm sure it was. Yeah. So, yeah, but it's a great time to be involved as a viewer and just to watch this whole thing play out. And for a while, way back in the late 90s, I kind of felt like we were on that same trajectory with J.K. Rowling because she published all her series, but then she kept coming back and saying and kind of adding to her characters. I don't know if y'all were even reading Harry Potter at that time, but I started thinking, well, she's a true storyteller because she just can't stop creating something new about her characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like she came out and said Dumbledore was gay, and she'd come out and say that Harry thought this or Ron thought that. It wasn't in the books, but as soon as she said it, it became canon, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Now I'm not so down with her for other reasons, but I feel like she's alienating people. I don't know what, but anyway, but to me that is a mark of a storyteller, that you just can't stop talking about your story, you know. But in this case, Martin's story got taken over by people who didn't really understand it, and that's what went wrong. So hopefully he's now back on track. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Anyway, yeah. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. We'll definitely have to have some podcasts if that comes out. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So.
Well, 2 more to go. Good stuff.
Only 2. Yeah.
So in the meantime, Layla, where can people find you?
You can find me at validatingmagazine.com and Twitter and various writing projects that are coming out.
You're busy. Yeah. And Jared.
And you can find me at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and on the podcast Speculations and other fine podcasts here on pagechewing.com.
Yeah, you can find me on Page Chewing, and all the links are down below, so be sure and check them out. And thanks everyone for listening and taking us along the journey with you, and we will talk to everyone again next week.